follow-up to the Sophie Cunningham situation from last night. Odyssey Sims hit the floor very hard during the game last night, and her teammates came out to the floor to check on her.
The Indiana Fever's playoff victory should have been a night of celebration, but instead, it turned into a viral storm centered around Sophie Cunningham, with Odyssey Sims crashing to the floor in a scary fall and emotions running high. All eyes shifted to Cunningham, not because of what she did, but because of what was done to her. Wearing a leg brace and clearly limited, Sophie was suddenly confronted at half-court by a security guard who seemed more interested in intimidation than protection.
The girls on the bench, Caitlin Clark, Chloe Bibby, Sophie Cunningham, they came to half-court. Did not cross the line, by the way. But for whatever reason, we had a situation involving PAULA BLART, mall cop, showed up last night to try to check Sophie Cunningham. Did she think Sophie Cunningham was about to run out there cause an incident? Sophie Cunningham's in a damn leg contraption. It's not even a brace. It's like a contraption.
Fans watching in disbelief compared the guard's behavior to a PAULA BLART mall cop routine, sparking outrage across social media. But the drama didn't end there. Within hours, Twitter was on fire, with haters unleashing vicious comments, defenders rallying behind Sophie, and the entire WNBA community divided. What should have been a proud Fever moment became a cultural flashpoint, and fans went absolutely wild.
Still showing that she is the enforcer of the team. I mean, standing toe-to-toe with a police officer. Standing toe-to-toe, damn near about to charge at a WNBA referee. Sophie cut like that. You want to know why Sophie cut like that? Because she's from my home state. She's from Missouri. She's from the Show Me State.
When the Indiana Fever punched their ticket to the semifinals, it should have been a moment frozen in pure joy. For a franchise that has endured years of frustration, finally breaking through carried an almost cinematic weight. The crowd inside, the arena roared, players embraced, and the Fever looked like a team ready to silence every critic who doubted they belonged. But in the middle of that celebration, something happened that flipped the atmosphere from triumphant to chaotic.
So last night, the Fever did the impossible, and they advanced to the semifinals. And last night I said, why in the F is that security guard all up on Sophie Cunningham?
The sequence began when Odyssey Sims went crashing to the hardwood. It wasn't a gentle fall. It was violent, awkward, and frightening enough to make everyone pause. Teammates sprinted to her side, concerned that the game's intensity had just left one of their own badly injured. The crowd hushed, cameras zoomed in, and for a brief moment, all the energy that filled the arena was replaced with a nervous silence. From the Fever's bench, Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark, and Chloe rose and walked toward half-court. They never crossed the line, respecting the boundary that separates benches from on-court action. But they were visibly engaged, showing concern. Sophie, in particular, stood out. She was wearing a leg brace, a visible reminder of her ongoing battle to stay active despite injury.
So this is Sophie. She looked like, you know what I'm saying, Iron Woman. I'm calling her Iron Woman with the bionic leg. Yes, that's Sophie Cunningham right there, standing on all business and principles because she cut like that.
It was obvious to anyone watching that she wasn't in any condition to jump into the fray. Yet she still showed solidarity with her team. And that's when the unexpected twist came. As Sophie stood near midcourt, the focus shifted from Sims' injury to the interaction between her and an overzealous security guard. The guard approached her aggressively, as if bracing for a confrontation. Fans immediately noticed the absurdity. Sophie wasn't charging the floor, wasn't breaking protocol, and wasn't even moving beyond her space. Yet here was a guard, stepping up as though Cunningham were some kind of threat.
And look, I think there is a reason she got up in Sophie's face. And I don't think there was any need to sort of bow up to Sophie like that.
It didn't take long for the comparisons to roll in. Social media erupted with jokes about PAULA BLART, mall cop, mocking the guard for theatrics that felt completely unnecessary. Clips of the incident went viral almost instantly, and what should have been a footnote to the game became the headline. But beneath the humor was a sharp edge. Many fans questioned why Sophie, in particular, was singled out. Why not Caitlin Clark or Chloe Bai, who stood right beside her? Why did a player with a brace on her leg, visibly limited, become the target? Of such hostility, the situation raised questions about professionalism, bias, and whether the guard was more interested in making a scene than doing their job.
Look at this police officer sauntering up. What the bleep are you doing? What? She knew exactly. She thought, I got an opportunity to intimidate this player. I know who she is. I know how popular she is. Let me come out here and get in Sophie Cunningham's face. Let me see if I can make myself a star.
As the Fever celebrated their victory, Sophie Cunningham unknowingly became the center of a very different story. A playoff win that should have unified fans now carried an undertone of controversy, and the real explosion wasn't happening in the arena. It was brewing online, where fans and critics alike were preparing to unload. Because what happened after the final buzzer was just the beginning.
But this is one of the ones I believe that posted about that incident. And it was some racist bullshit against whites. And here we are again, attack of the crackers.
The moment Sophie Cunningham found herself face to face with a security guard is the moment everything spiraled into controversy. On the surface, it should have been routine, a player wearing a leg brace, standing at half court with her teammates as they checked on Odyssey Sims, but the guard's reaction turned an ordinary scene into a spectacle that people are still debating. Sophie wasn't yelling. She wasn't rushing the floor, and she certainly wasn't in any position to get physical. Yet the guard marched toward her with an almost exaggerated bravado, planting themselves directly in front of Cunningham as if she were about to storm the court. Fans watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. Sophie, injured and motionless, looked stunned but refused to back away. That refusal to shrink became the spark that ignited the entire incident. The optics were bizarre. Here was a professional athlete clearly limited by injury, in full view of thousands, being treated as if she were a disruptive intruder. The guard's posture screamed confrontation, almost as if they were waiting for Sophie to make the slightest move so they could escalate. Instead, Sophie held her ground, cool and composed, which only highlighted how unnecessary the guard's aggression was. It wasn't lost on anyone that the rest of her teammates nearby weren't approached. In the same way, this double standard immediately caught the attention of fans. Why Sophie? Why not Caitlin Clark, who was literally standing shoulder to shoulder with her? Why not Chloe Bai? Why did the guard zero in on the one player who clearly couldn't move quickly or pose any threat? Theories spread rapidly. Some believed the guard wanted a viral moment, a chance to look like the enforcer on national television. Others argued that Sophie's visibility and growing popularity made her an easy target. Confront the face of the controversy, and you get noticed. Too many viewers. The whole thing reeked of unprofessionalism. Security guards are supposed to de-escalate to keep things calm. This guard seemed to do the opposite, stepping into the spotlight with an unnecessary display of authority. And while it may have lasted only a few seconds, the confrontation burned itself into the memory of everyone who saw it. What stood out most was Sophie's reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't backtrack, and didn't play into the theatrics. Even with her leg brace, she exuded defiance, a subtle message that she wasn't about to be intimidated. That quiet strength resonated with her supporters, who saw her as a player unfairly targeted and unfairly villainized. But if the in-arena confrontation stirred debate, what came next turned the moment into something much bigger. Social media lit up within minutes, with clips spreading across Twitter and Instagram. What began as a tense encounter on the hardwood transformed into an all-out online war. And Sophie Cunningham was about to become the lightning rod for a tidal wave of hate and support alike. The moment the footage hit Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, the Sophie Cunningham incident stopped being just about basketball. Within minutes, comment sections were flooded, timelines were hijacked, and hashtags were spinning out of control. What should have been a playoff celebration for the Indiana Fever became an online battlefield where Sophie was at the center of a storm. At first, the viral clips leaned into humor. Fans cracked jokes about the guard playing PAULA BLART mall cop, turning a tense moment into meme material. The video of Sophie, standing firm in her leg brace while being checked like a security risk, seemed almost too absurd to be real. But quickly, the tone shifted. The jokes gave way to vitriol, and the replies filled with some of the ugliest, most personal attacks imaginable. Haters didn't just critique Sophie's presence at half-court. They went after everything about her. Racist remarks appeared almost instantly, with users mocking her skin color, her appearance, and even her family background. Others dismissed her as riding Caitlin Clark's coattail, claiming she was only relevant because of her teammates. The language got nastier with every refresh, full of insults that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with tearing her down. What made it worse was the speed. Within an hour of the incident, Sophie's name was trending, and the narrative had spun far beyond the actual confrontation. Some accused her of trying to intimidate a black security guard, twisting the clip into something it wasn't. Others called her entitled, suggesting she believed she was above the rules. The reality that she never even stepped past half-court was lost in the chaos of online pylons. For Sophie's defenders, it was maddening. They pointed out the obvious. She was injured, visibly braced, and standing beside her teammates who weren't targeted. They asked why Sophie was singled out both in the arena and now online. Was it because she's outspoken? Because she's popular? Or because, as some argued, she's become the kind of polarizing figure the WNBA fanbase can't stop fighting over? And make no mistake, Sophie Cunningham is polarizing. For every cruel comment, there was someone else jumping in to back her up, praising her toughness, her refusal to back down, and her willingness to stand firm even when unfairly confronted. The divide between haters and supporters grew wider by the minute, with both sides digging in deeper. By the end of the night, the Fever's win wasn't even the story anymore. Sophie was the headline, and the incident had become a proxy war for larger issues: race, popularity, jealousy, and the way women athletes are judged under the microscope of social media. What should have been a fleeting confrontation had turned into a full-blown narrative, one that was only going to get uglier as more voices joined the fray. And the ugliest part of it all: the accusations that came next pushed the controversy into an entirely new level. What ignited the fiercest debates after the Sophie Cunningham incident wasn't just the confrontation itself, but the way the story was framed online. Within hours, social media users began accusing Sophie of being a racist simply because she stood near half-court while a black security guard stepped into her space. Never mind that Sophie was visibly checking on her teammate Odyssey Sims, who is also black. Never mind that she never said a word to the guard or made any kind of threatening gesture. The accusation was enough to spark a tidal wave of outrage, and suddenly, Sophie wasn't just a player in a brace, she was painted as a villain in a much bigger cultural narrative. The hypocrisy of it all hit hard. Supporters were quick to point out a glaring double standard. If the roles had been reversed, if a black player had been confronted by a white guard, the conversation online would have been completely different. People would have been shouting about racial profiling, unfair treatment, and systemic bias. But when it was Sophie in that position, those same voices turned on her, labeling her as the aggressor. The fact that she was literally standing still, unable to do much of anything in her condition, didn't matter. The storyline had already been twisted. This isn't the first time WNBA players have been judged through the lens of double standards, but Sophie's case took it to a new extreme. She became the lightning rod for both the league's tensions and society's cultural divides. To some, she symbolized privilege, a white, blonde, outspoken player who didn't fit in with the league's dominant narratives. To others, she was the target of unfair treatment, a player who was attacked for things that had nothing to do with her performance or her character. The contradictions grew even more blatant when fans started digging into the clip. The guard had bypassed Caitlin Clark and Chloe by both standing right beside Sophie. Neither of them was accused of being racist. Neither was singled out. The spotlight somehow landed solely on Cunningham, as if her presence alone made her guilty. It wasn't about action, it was about perception. And perception can be far more damaging than reality in today's media environment. This double standard reveals something troubling about how players are treated, especially when popularity and image come into play. Sophie's growing status as one of the league's most recognizable faces means everything she does is magnified. The same gesture that would be ignored if done by another player becomes front-page controversy when Sophie is involved. Her looks, her personality, and her refusal to stay silent make her an easy target, and in this case, Those qualities fueled accusations that spiraled out of control. For Sophie's defenders, the outrage wasn't just unfair. It was proof of how far people will stretch to create drama where none exists. For her critics, it was the perfect excuse to double down on their dislike. And as the arguments raged, one fact became undeniable. Sophie's popularity wasn't just making her a star. It was also making her a lightning rod. But why does she inspire such extreme reactions? Adoration on one side and venom on the other. The answer lies in her rising profile within the WNBA, and the numbers behind her influence tell the story. To understand why Sophie Cunningham became the target of so much hostility, you have to look beyond the confrontation itself and into the numbers. Because the truth is simple. Sophie isn't just another player on the Indiana Fever, she's one of the most, instead of protecting her, has made her a magnet for controversy. Analytics tell the story. Outside of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, no player in the league generates more online engagement than Sophie Cunningham. Whether it's search results, social media mentions, or fan discussions, Sophie's name consistently sits near the top. She's essentially the third pillar of WNBA attention, trailing only the two biggest stars of the new generation. For the Fever, that's an unexpected bonus. Having both Caitlin and Sophie on the same roster means the team commands more headlines than almost anyone else. But with that visibility comes a darker side. Popularity in women's sports doesn't always operate like it does with NBA stars. Fame often equals universal respect. In the WNBA, however, popularity can just as easily turn into resentment. Sophie embodies that tension. She's outspoken, unapologetic, and carries an image that doesn't fit neatly into the narratives many fans want to embrace. Blonde, charismatic, modeling off the court, and fiery on it, she's the kind of personality that divides audiences. For some, Sophie represents a refreshing burst of energy in a league that craves marketable stars. Her presence draws attention from casual fans, male viewers, and media outlets that otherwise wouldn't give the WNBA much coverage. That attention brings money, sponsorships, and growth opportunities for everyone. Yet instead of celebrating that, a significant portion of fans treat Sophie's popularity like a threat. They frame her as someone who doesn't deserve the spotlight or accuse her of overshadowing other players who don't generate the same buzz. The frustration is amplified by her confidence. Sophie doesn't shy away from acknowledging her appeal. That infamous viral clip where she laughed and said the one thing male sports fans want to see more of is me only. To her fans, it was iconic, a perfect mix of humor and confidence. To her detractors, it was arrogance. Another reason to tear her down. This polarization explains why the security guard incident escalated so quickly. Sophie isn't just a role player, she's a symbol. To her supporters, she's unfairly targeted because of her image and her growing influence. To her critics, she's the easy villain, the player they love to hate. And when you combine that with the Fever's rise in the playoffs, her visibility was always going to multiply. What happened that night wasn't just about a guard confronting a player. It was about what Sophie Cunningham represents, the clash between popularity and resentment. And the louder her name gets in the WNBA conversation, the more divided the reactions will become. But Sophie's story isn't only about numbers and image. It's also about the people who rush to defend her and those who relentlessly attack her, creating a fan war that shows no sign of slowing down. The Sophie Cunningham saga didn't just end with a confrontation and a flood of angry tweets. What it truly ignited was a battle line drawn across WNBA fandom, with defenders and haters clashing in every corner of the internet. It became more than a debate about one incident. It evolved into a full-blown cultural war about what Sophie represents. On one side were her defenders, and they were loud. They pointed out how absurd it was to accuse a player in a leg brace of trying to start trouble. They reminded everyone that Sophie didn't cross the line, didn't break protocol, and wasn't even capable of storming the court in her condition. To them, she was targeted unfairly. First by an overzealous security guard, and then by an online mob looking for someone to tear down. Many argued that Sophie was being punished not for her actions, but for her popularity and appearance, qualities that, ironically, helped the league as a whole. Supporters also praised her composure. While the guard puffed up with authority, Sophie never lost her cool. She didn't argue, didn't step back, and didn't let the moment rattle her. That quiet defiance in the eyes of her fans showed strength. She refused to be bullied, and that made her an instant hero to those who saw the whole thing as a needless attempt to embarrass her. But the other side was just as vocal. Her haters doubled down, using the confrontation as ammunition to paint Sophie as entitled and arrogant. They claimed she only stood at half court to make herself visible, to soak up the spotlight. Some insisted she was riding Caitlin Clark's coattail, capitalizing on the Fever's media attention without actually earning it. Others went further, dragging her personal life, her looks, and even her family into the mud. It wasn't just criticism, it was character assassination. This divide revealed something deeper about how Sophie functions in the league. She's more than a role player. She's a polarizing figure. To her fans, she embodies toughness, confidence, and unapologetic individuality. To her critics, she embodies everything they resent about popularity in sports. The idea that someone can be celebrated for who they are rather than what they produce on the stat sheet. That contrast ensures that every move she makes, every word she speaks, will be magnified and dissected far beyond what it would be for most players. The defenders versus haters dynamic also magnified the Fever's profile. Having both Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham on the same roster meant that Indiana became ground zero for the WNBA's biggest cultural battles. The team wasn't just fighting opponents on the court, they were constantly trending online, with every moment twisted into debate fodder. And while the defenders and haters were busy trading blows, Sophie herself added fuel to the fire with a bold viral clip that would turn the controversy into an even bigger spectacle. Just when the dust seemed like it might settle, Sophie Cunningham lit another match, and this time she struck it herself. A clip surfaced online that showed Sophie laughing with a microphone in hand, delivering a line that would send both her supporters and her critics into overdrive. "If there's one thing male sports fans want to see more of, it's me," she said with a grin. The crowd laughed, but the internet didn't just laugh, it exploded. To Sophie's fans, the moment was classic Cunningham. It was bold, confident, a little tongue-in-cheek, and exactly the kind of swagger they love her for. She wasn't just a player, she was a personality. Someone willing to embrace the spotlight and call out the obvious truth that she's marketable, charismatic, and has the kind of crossover appeal the WNBA desperately needs. The clip was shared by her defenders as proof that Sophie knows her value and isn't afraid to own it. But for her haters, the line was gasoline on an already raging fire. They pounced, calling her arrogant, delusional, and self-absorbed. Some accused her of belittling the league by suggesting her looks mattered more than her game. Others argued she was undermining her teammates, framing herself as the main attraction rather than part of a collective effort. The criticism piled on so quickly that the clip spread even faster, crossing over from sports pages into mainstream social media feeds. The polarizing reactions weren't just about Sophie's words, they were about what she represents. In a league that struggles to break into the mainstream spotlight, Sophie Cunningham had positioned herself as someone who could draw eyes in ways others couldn't. For some fans, that's a blessing. For others, it's a threat to the league's identity. A reminder that popularity doesn't always align with on-court production. What made the clip even more fascinating was its timing. Coming right after the security guard showdown, it amplified the existing divide. Her supporters saw it as Sophie doubling down, refusing to let criticism shake her confidence. Her detractors saw it as arrogance, layered on top of entitlement, proof that she thrives on stirring controversy. Either way, Sophie's presence in the conversation only grew larger, and there's no denying the impact. The viral moment generated more engagement than some actual playoff highlights. It was shared, dissected, mocked, and praised thousands of times. For the Fever, it meant even more media attention. For the WNBA, it meant another debate about what kind of stars the league should elevate. And for Sophie, it meant she was no longer just part of the story. She was the story. The "I'm what fans want" clip cemented her as one of the league's most polarizing figures. Whether fans laughed with her or seethed at her confidence, they were still talking about her. And in sports, that level of attention is power. But this incident wasn't just about Sophie's image. It revealed cracks in the league itself, exposing deeper problems the WNBA has been unable to escape. The Sophie Cunningham drama may have started with a single confrontation, but it exposed a larger truth about the WNBA, a league constantly caught between growth and division. What should have been a celebration of the Fever advancing to the semifinals became another example of how off-court narratives overshadow the actual game. And that isn't just bad luck, it's a symptom of deeper problems the league has yet to solve. First, there's the issue of how the WNBA markets its stars. Instead of rallying behind the personalities that actually draw attention, the league often seems hesitant, even resistant, to fully embrace polarizing figures like Sophie Cunningham. Caitlin Clark's arrival forced the spotlight to widen. But players like Sophie have long been a flashpoint, simultaneously attracting attention and sparking resentment. When a player's popularity becomes a bigger story than her performance, it exposes how fragile the WNBA's identity really is. Then there's the fan culture. Sophie's incident revealed a toxic divide that runs deeper than basketball. The fact that accusations of racism and entitlement could be thrown around so casually shows how social media has turned the WNBA into a battleground for culture wars. Fans are no longer just debating plays or stats, they're debating identity, image, and narratives that often have little to do with the game itself. That environment makes it almost impossible for controversies like Sophie's to stay small. Everything is magnified, weaponized, and spun into outrage. The security guard moment also highlighted professionalism, or the lack of it. A league trying to build credibility on a national stage cannot afford to have incidents where its players look intimidated by its own staff. For casual viewers who tuned in, the sight of a security guard posturing against an injured player wasn't just bizarre, it was embarrassing. It reinforced the idea that the WNBA isn't always in control of its own image, leaving players to bear the brunt of the fallout. What's even more troubling is how quickly these moments overshadow the actual product on the court. The Fever pulled off a massive win, something their fans had been waiting years to celebrate. Yet instead of headlines about Odyssey Sims' tough play or Caitlin Clark's leadership, the coverage fixated on Sophie Cunningham and a security guard. That imbalance reflects a league struggling to control its narrative, where drama too often drowns out basketball. And finally, the Sophie situation exposed the league's biggest challenge: jealousy. Whenever a player like Sophie or Caitlin becomes a lightning rod, the backlash from peers and fans alike is intense. Instead of celebrating stars who bring attention, the instinct is often to tear them down. Until the WNBA figures out how to channel that attention into collective growth rather than infighting. These controversies will keep repeating. The Sophie Cunningham confrontation was more than just a viral clip. It was a mirror, showing the WNBA's strengths and its flaws all at once. And if this is how wild things get in the semifinals, what happens when the Fever push even deeper into the playoffs? Sophie Cunningham's confrontation with the so-called PAULA BLART mall cop was never just about one tense exchange at half court. It became the spark that revealed everything simmering beneath the surface of the WNBA: the rivalries, the double standards, the jealousy, and the endless battles over who deserves the spotlight. In the span of a single night, Sophie went from injured bystander to the league's most polarizing headline, with defenders praising her toughness and haters tearing at every detail of her identity. And yet, in all the chaos, one fact stands out: people can't stop talking about her. Whether she's loved, mocked, or vilified, Sophie Cunningham has become a symbol of the WNBA's growing pains and its hunger for star power. The Fever's playoff run will continue. But the question lingers: is Sophie simply the league's lightning rod, or is she rewriting what it means to be a star?